So I'll call this session into order. And first order of business, I'd just like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from last time. Did anyone have any objections?
No.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. First off, I'd like to welcome Abigail, who is our new additional alternate to the committee. And if you want to just talk about yourself for a minute.
Oh, sure.
Let everyone know who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, my name's Abby. I graduated from Monument Mountain High School in the spring, and now I'm in the Stockbridge School of Agriculture at UMass. I'm studying sustainable food and farming, and I'm on my winter break at the moment, so really happy to be here in person.
Awesome.
Nice to have you here.
Yeah, good to have you here. All right. So for tonight, discussion, we're going to start talking about stewardship grants for the town forests. So this should be considering all the town's forests and start thinking about beyond Ice Glen. And in the documents I sent you, we had 2 Excel spreadsheets, one with notes on it, identifying some potential public properties, public lands that might be of interest. But we also wanted to make a note of theoretically what could a CPA funding, if that's even possible. So if anyone would like to kick off with any thoughts on stewardship.
Sure, I can kick off. We had talked about stewardship grants in the past, and those, Shelby and I looked at them, and they seemed pretty straightforward. So I think it would make sense to look at these parcels in a structured way and see if there's any that would be appropriate for any kind of management. But then I thought too about CPA funding, and I don't know what the history of CPA for forested any kind of open space or forested land is in Stockbridge, but in Great Barrington we got CPA funds for McAllister Reserve, mostly for invasive management, and we're able to do it successive years. I think it's on the 3rd or 4th year now, and the improvements were remarkable, and it really opened up a lot in terms of public access and letting people really be able to enjoy the woods and to take better care of the woods. So I don't know if anybody here knows if that's ever been done in Stockbridge, or how CPA funding has been used for forests.
I can talk about that a little bit. As I applied for CPA funding for some projects when I was on Laurel Hill Association. Yep. So yeah, there is the open space recreation category, and the CPC is pretty open to different kinds of ideas. So yeah, and it can certainly fund the town. It doesn't have to only fund non-town entities. So when it comes to stewardship grants, though, I think that it's likely that the grant would cover all of the costs that we would incur, but it's not guaranteed. With the stewardship grants that we got for the Laurel Hill Association, they got finished after my term was done. I mean, the stewardship plans got completed after my term was done. So I don't know what the final cost was, but the forester expected it to cost a little bit more, just a few $1,000s more than what the grant was going to cover. And of course, with Laurel Hill, they paid the difference, but with us, we'd have to get the town to pay the difference.
Do you know if stewardship grants could be applied for, I know CPA likes to have other funding sources. So if we had a parcel that we were interested in getting some work done on, could we do the stewardship grant as part of the CPA application?
Oh, you mean as matching the matching
Or
funds?
just
kind of
as showing other funding sources? I don't know if
Oh.
they use the term matching, but just
Yeah.
other funding sources.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, they don't, you're right, they don't have matching per se, but they want you to show that you're contributing in some way. And it can be monetary, it can be volunteer effort, in-kind services, basically anything that shows that you're not just asking for a handout. So yeah, the stewardship grant would definitely count in that regard.
And I think what,
Who is the granting authority for these stewardship grants?
It's the state, oh gosh,
Is it DCR?
DCR?
yeah, DCR.
Yeah. When we had Mike Buffoni and we had him just kind of go over what he had done in AVRAC property. I mean, obviously a lot of that is the watershed. And I know they are pulling out lumber from there on a I think 30-year, they move through the property and slowly move. That's one of, I feel like when I'm looking at the sheet, it's one of the largest properties. And then he also mentioned he had another property across the road, another location that they hadn't been in for years. So I know, and I think those are two of the largest that are wooded.
It'd be good to get a sense of, I mean, I don't know these properties.
Right.
It'd be good to get a sense of how, if the invasives are bad there. I don't know offhand. But that is something I think we could get funding from, both stewardship and CPA for.
Well, it might be good to reach out with him because I know he does have a forester that has worked that property for quite a long time, and see if we can get them in and make an application for that specific parcel.
If he thinks that would be appropriate.
If he thinks it'd be appropriate.
Yeah.
Because I also think, if I remember correctly, it has to be continuous,
What has,
the property, if we are applying for stewardship.
I don't understand.
Is it
It continues.
the actual land mass that we're applying for, or can it be parcels non-continuous?
Shelby, I haven't done stewardship, so Shelby would know better than me.
They need to be fairly contiguous, but they don't. But it's interesting that when I was looking into this, Laurel Hill got a grant for Laurel Hill and the property that Laura's Tower is on, and they are separated by the river and also by a little strip of town land. I mean, they more or less abut, but not exactly. But they're clearly, for all intents and purposes, in terms of ecology, they're contiguous.
Same property.
Right.
So would it make sense to reach out to Mike again and see if
Yeah.
we could see it, I think that'd be wonderful.
Right.
But if he had a sense of what was needed where, and then we could make some decisions from there.
Yeah, because I'm assuming, I don't know when he thought that work was going to be done. But it might be nice to get him in here soon and see if we can get it for him if there's something before he goes in.
And stewardship grants are rolling, or is there a deadline, Shelby?
There's a deadline. They are rolling, but the proposals have to be in by sometime in late spring, I think it is.
Okay, so that, and CPA, I think, is October.
Oh, no, our CPA is in, actually it's now, it's January, it's January, and early February. They every year they change it a little bit, but basically they have meetings in early January where you basically, people who are going to apply present their idea, and then they get feedback about, here's what you make sure you cover this or address that or whatever. And then the applications are due generally at the end of January. So we would,
Okay,
I
so
think,
does it vary from town to town? I don't know.
I don't know, I've never dealt with anywhere else.
Okay, I thought it was later. I was on the CPC in Great Barrington. I thought it was later. But so we can't do it for this year. We'd have to do it for next year, but we could maybe start with the stewardship.
Well, and then the other thing with the stewardship too, with, ABRIC, but also I thought too, originally I thought we brought it up for Ice Glen to also apply for that, to make a plan, a strategy down the road after this treatment too.
With Mike Morey?
With the stewardship, with whichever forester.
We had decided we'd go with Mike.
Laurie, yeah. So I think, so that begs the question is, can we apply for this in two different parcels at the same time?
I don't see why not.
Right.
All they can say is no.
Oh, for the stewardship.
Yeah.
We can apply for as many parcels as we want.
Okay.
I mean, I think I put in 6 applications with Laurel Hill.
Gotcha.
So if we did Ice Glen, it would be good to have Mike Morey's input.
Yeah.
And Mike Buffani's input for whatever else.
So then that also to kind of drill down on what are the priorities that we are kind of looking for in properties? Because I heard you bring up invasives as a thought.
I would be interested in invasives on the town forest. For Ice Glen, I would think it's managing an old growth forest.
Right.
Would be my thought. I don't know what other people think.
Obviously, I think with Mike, it will also be the lumber from that because they've been doing it for however many years to manage that in the ABRIC. I hope I'm pronouncing that ABRIC property.
Yeah, and nice thing about the stewardship program is that the landowner says what the goals are.
Right.
It's not necessarily about logging. It's whatever whatever you say is important. That's what the forester will help you plan. So where logging is a factor, then they'll weigh in on that.
Yeah.
It also seems then it also kind of seems like we need to. It's almost like you were saying before, see the properties, because I feel like obviously with Ice Glen you're going to have trail systems. We have the management of the pests, and we also have old growth in that one location. But then there's other invasives in terms of we have bittersweet, burning bush, Japanese knotweed. So it almost kind of seems, it's like a weird chicken and the egg, almost kind of apply and.
Yeah, no, we need to see and make some decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess, is there any other properties that people thought of right off the bat? Besides Ice Glen, ABRIC, the other property that Mike was talking about across the road that he had identified at the meeting he was at. Some of these other ones I have no.
Yeah, again, I don't know these places. So.
Well,
and a lot of them seem pretty small.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be 9 or 10 acres or something like that as a minimum. There's a property just north of Lily Pond that may be worth looking at. And there's a property on Devon Road. It's called the George Ripley Natural Area, which I had never heard of until I looked at this spreadsheet. So they may be worth considering. Gould Meadow is interesting because there's a nonprofit organization, the Friends of Gould Meadow, that are managing Gould Meadow, and I don't know if enough of Gould Meadow is forested to qualify for a stewardship plan. But if they have not I mean, we can talk to the Friends group and see if it makes sense, because the town owns it and it's a really valuable resource for recreation.
It's a good idea. And is it mostly wetland?
It's got some wetland, but it's like there's wetland kind of here and there through it. There's a bit of a stream that runs through the open space, and then it joins up with a slightly larger stream that runs down to the Stockbridge Bowl. But it's mostly hikeable, so it's dry land.
Okay.
I just don't know how much of it is wooded versus grassland. One thing I wonder about, since there's a forester already working with Mike on the properties around Everglade, would we want to do a stewardship plan for those properties anyway, or do we just not need it because we got a forester already dealing with it? And the same thing with the properties that's sort of across 102, Stockbridge Mountain property, two properties.
Even though there's a forester, wouldn't the forester benefit from having the money from the stewardship plan?
I mean, it sounds like if we can help pay for that, if they're going to pay for him doing the time,
Yeah,
and we can get the money for it,
why not?
it seems like a win-win.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, did he actually, has this forester essentially done a stewardship plan of his own, even if it's not official?
I think we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. And if they did, my guess it would be for logging. It might not be for something like invasives.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, we don't know. So it'd be good to get that information.
So we'll get Mike back in here and see if we can get a frame of reference where he's at and where the forester's at. Because maybe you're right that it's mostly done. In my what I can remember, it seemed like it was that other property that they were trying to figure out, the one that was near Abrick. But I don't know which parcel it actually is on this list. We'll get Mike back in here. I think the Old Town dump, don't know anything about it, but does anyone know anything where the Glendale Middle Road?
I don't.
It's got a solar farm
Got a solar farm.
and it's got a cell tower.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I suspect it's not, and it's really not open to the public.
Okay.
So it may not need anything.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
So to kind of try to take some action steps on this, I'll reach out to Mike, see if he can come to a meeting and just talk with us about what he has done, what he wants to do. In terms of the properties, if I miss any, that I think people were most interested in looking at were the George Ripley, the Gould Meadow. We have Ice Glen, obviously, and then the Abrick and the other property that Mike would be talking about. Does anyone have a connection with the Meadow or the Ripley property, the Friends of Gould Meadows? Someone know anyone there?
I don't know if anyone on the Conservation Commission is
Gotcha.
part of that. I can ask. So Gould Meadows.
Yeah.
And I dealt with the Gould Meadows folks during my tenure at Laurel Hill, so I could certainly reach out to them.
Okay, so you'll do that, and I won't do that.
Gotcha.
And are there Conservation Commission people on that Friends of Gould Meadow?
Oh, that's a good question.
I thought there were.
There probably are.
So that would be good.
And then the George Ripley. Is anyone?
I don't know any of these.
None of these. Okay. I'll investigate that. See
And
who's there.
so a side question
Mm-hmm.
is Mike Morey officially the forester for Ice Glen? Is that finalized?
I don't know.
It's been recommended, but I don't know if anyone ever reached out to him or.
I don't know. That's a good question. Let me bring that up with Michael Knaus.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was dependent on us getting the grant either.
Right.
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 No.
Okay. All right. And so this is coming up in springtime for the stewardship grants. Let me look up right now.
Deadlines? Yeah.
Let's find out what date. Oh, this is from 2014. We'll find out the date and we'll schedule. We'll make sure that we schedule this into the meeting, especially if it's coming up soon. But Shelby, you don't think it's before like March, April?
Oh,
for the
no.
stewardship? Okay.
No, definitely not. Oh, and Lisa, Ron Brauker is
Okay, good.
is on the Friends.
Yeah, great. Good.
All right. So, to just kind of circle back for one thing about what our priorities are too, I think Shelby, you sent around something for natural
Treatment of the.
natural treatment of ash borers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That came to me from Laurel Hill Association Board.
Okay. Do you want to talk about it for one minute, just about what's in it?
Sure. Let me see. So it's like a 60-page document. So I'll give you the highlights. There are several parasitic wasps that have been successfully released to control the ash borer, and they particularly I noticed was successful in long-term studies in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Michigan, and New York. So that's very reassuring.
Mm-hmm.
And there's all kinds of recommendations and requirements about entering data into this website where you track what you're doing and the results. And they have guidelines for determining whether or not the particular property you're looking at is a good one for parasite release, parasitoids, excuse me. And you see release during the fall, winter, early spring. No, that's when you're determining it. There's like 3 releases: spring, midsummer, and late summer in the first couple of years. But before that, to assess, and during it, you assess the parasite established, whether it was established by checking in different times of the year under bark and whatnot. They say that we should. This is kind of interesting. Locate parasitoid release sites in naturally forested areas, woodlots, wooded wetlands, and riparian zones. That sounds good. Avoid sites with excessive human activity, as well as sites along roads, trails, or railroad tracks, and in picnic areas, golf courses, and open parklands. So Ice Glen doesn't have excessive human activity, but there's the railroad track is near it. I mean, I don't know how important these factors are. So it probably is worth some research and some talking to experts. They say wooded areas at least 40 acres in size are preferred. But if they're smaller, then they should have a relatively high density of ash trees. And it generally, like at least 25% of the trees in the area that you'd want to treat should be ash. A higher percentage is even better. So I haven't, since I looked at this, I haven't gone back to the report that we got of the ice glen to see what percentage is ash. Does it actually qualify? But it's certainly worth looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there were that many in Ice Glen.
Yeah.
Right. And so the Laurel Hills, are they looking at this actively?
Apparently, yeah. They really would like to use natural controls on their lands. So, they're looking at this. I don't know how far they've gotten with it. They may just be doing the research. I honestly don't think that they have 25% or more ash coverage in any of their properties either, frankly. That's a lot of ash.
That's a lot of ash.
Yeah.
Because most of them are already dead.
Yeah. Well, I think though that speaks to especially as we're going into the stewardship grants, really looking at the long-term like time horizons of some of these treatments and pests.
And cost.
And the cost, because I think, down the road, after we do the ice glen treatment, there is opportunity for some stuff that's more systemic, from what I understand. So we can reduce the usage, but have a longer term effect, depending on what we use after this. Because there are biologicals for the woolly adelgid. They're kind of still hemming and hawing, from what I understand, about whether they're super thriving in the areas they've released them. But it's another thing, that could help reduce the density, like you're saying with ash borer.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't remember where we got this one from, but we also have a document, it's even longer, about integrated pest management for woolly adelgid. And, and I hadn't really looked at it much before I was getting ready for this. And, it's definitely worth looking at.
I agree.
So there's that. Anything else? So do we feel pretty good about the stewardship grants for now, where we're going to go? Any other questions? I mean, obviously we got to find out right when we got to submit this. We're going to get Mike in here, talk about what he needs, if he needs, when he needs, and ice glen, and we're going to research the other two. That sounds pretty summed up.
Yep.
Okay.
And maybe start to look at a CPA application for the
following, yeah. But that's good to know. It seems like for next year, this window of time, there's a lot of grants that we could go for. It seems to be all happening like the very first of the calendar year. All right, just quick update. Tree City. Lisa put together a very nice just list of what information we need for the Tree City application / renewals. What I'm going to do is take that and I'm going to track down Mark Faber and go over with him and see what he thinks, so that we can all be comfortable with the amount of information. And it seems to me too, it's a lot of stuff that we can put together over the course of the year.
When I went through it, because I hadn't done it in a long time, the only information we really need from him is number of trees planted, number of trees taken down, which should be public record. I mean, that should not be a hard statistic. And if the state requires a work plan, they want it attached. I don't know if the state requires a work plan. So if
I'll ask.
he has to do it, we would attach a copy. Everything else, I would be very willing to get the information. It's all, and I tried looking everything up and I could find everything except for that piece of information. And I wanted to say two things, just in response, because I know, Eric, you had some reservations. One, this is only a 1 year. If we apply for this and it's approved, it's only for 1 year. It's not a long commitment. And if we found at the end of the year that it was really an overwhelming amount of work, which I don't think it is, we just wouldn't apply it again. So there's not a long-term commitment. And the second thing is a little more personal, and that's from my perspective. The planet's in a lot of trouble, and one of the I mean, I worry about that, not so much for myself, but for future generations. And I think one of the things this commission can do is manage the forests well, which I think we're trying to do, and which is going to help with carbon. And the other really important thing is I think this commission can take a really active role in tree planting. And I know in Barrington and Sheffield has planted hundreds of trees. Barrington, we planted dozens of trees. And one of the things I really liked about Tree City and the Arbor Day Foundation is the access to the seedlings, very, very inexpensive. And, if we can be distributing 200-300 seedlings a year to people to plant, to me, that means we're chipping away just a little bit. It's not going to solve the problem, but it's a very easy way to try to make a difference. So, for those reasons, I really would like to pursue this application. Again, having been part of it for several years, it's just not a lot of work. It's really not a lot of work. And any way we can raise public awareness and plant a few trees, if it means filling out a few forms, I think it's worth it. There's no cost.
The reason I brought up the time it takes, your experience is in Great Barrington.
Yep.
They have full-time people in charge of every department, and most of them have assistants or shared assistants. We have part-time people.
Yep.
Nobody really has an assistant. So if there was, you said it was a long application, if it required somebody to actually put it together other than you, you're using town resources when they pretty well are fully used.
Yep.
So if all you need is 2 numbers from Mark, ask him if he can do that and put it in his town report. The last forester didn't do one last year.
Yeah, I looked, I didn't see it. Yeah.
Very brief. But if he'd do that, then you can just pull them off of there.
Yeah.
And in Barrington, it was the tree committee that filled this out.
Yeah.
It wasn't the town that filled it out. Yeah, it wasn't a lot of town resources.
Well, and I think, to both your points, I think, laying it out like this, instead of having it in a huge application and form that can, at first, just a glance, I mean.
This is the application.
I think, or you just hear the word, and I think with this, we'll bring it, we'll get it confirmed and everyone cozy, and then we're like the assistants, I feel like. Like, that's why we're all here in this room and on the screen anyway, is to assist the workers and make sure that we can get our town recognition, get it money, and get it some help. So that'd be saying, I'll get that in front of Mark just to confirm it, and when, find out when he'll put that information out in the town report, or when it comes up, that we can grab it off that or get it from him personally.
So I think, the deadline for this is at the end of December.
Yeah.
The report should come out.
Right, town meeting.
The town meeting.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So I think we would be okay with that.
All right. And, just on a side note to that point about planting trees and thinking about the stewardship grants too, I brought up the idea of saving some of the seeds from our ice glen and starting and working with someone to help start planting and propagating. I brought that up to one of the professors at Harvard Forest, and he seemed to really like that idea.
Nice.
Because a lot of people we don't have enough seeds. I will pass around an article. We don't have enough seeds to be planting what we need to be planting in the entire country. So I think it's also could be part of our strategy over the next, if we have a 100-year plan, to be saving at least seeds and start propagating them, because that will be the next 100 years, 400 years of some of these trees, and just trying to protect them from the get-go. That's something I personally would love to see kind of start going forward with some of these very precious DNA. All right. Well, anyone have anything else? New year. All right. That being said, thank you all for coming.
I do have one.
Go for it.
So at the next town meeting, can Shelby and Abigail be proposed to be full-time, like non-alternate people?
I think so. To be clear, I think that has to go to a vote
By
either the select board or the town people. It has to go before the town. So it'll be at the town meeting.
town meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
But so it can go to vote and they can be voted in at the town meeting? I mean,
That's another question.
It's a bylaw. We have to vote. We have to basically have a warrant to change the bylaw that defines how many voting members are on the commission. So once that's done, then the town meeting doesn't have to vote on who the commissioners are.
Right.
They just vote on changing the bylaw, and then we go to the select board to approve.
So is that in the works to have it go?
Chuck said, I think Chuck's going to take that, get the warrant. I'll confirm it with him that he's going to put that together. And then at the town meeting, they'll bring it up for a vote. They'll vote to change it to a 5.
Okay.
And then the select board will select 2 other members.
Okay.
Theoretically.
Okay. So that's in process. And is there a joint meeting or a meeting where the select board is going to talk with us about selecting a date for the dedication?
I have an email out with Mike right now to hopefully do set up a meeting about that in conjunction with farmers markets. So obviously it was over the holidays, so yeah. But thank you for bringing it. Yes. So as soon as I know more, hopefully you all know more.
Okay.
That being said, I'd like to make a motion to call this meeting to a close. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah.